Maisha here and welcome to my library. I probably read some of the most annoying books in August and here they are, and they're a bit spoilery, so please proceed with caution. Please proceed with caution. Okay, so the first book I read in August was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. Okay, so this was my first time reading Emily Henry books because I do believe she writes predominantly romance novels, and I tend to stay away from romance. If I'm being honest, I think I read way too many adult romance novels when I had no business doing so, and it kind of put me off. Plus, smut kind of grosses me out outside of this one specific time of year where I can read it. Spice, smut spice. I think they call it spice in the book community. Okay, so I give this book 3 stars because I kind of did enjoy it in some way, but in most ways I didn't. So this book is about two writers, Alice and Hayden, who have the opportunity to write the biography for Miss Margaret St. Ives, who was once a famous socialite from a family of, I guess they were like the wealthy elite, like those type of old money families who have their fingers in everything. Yeah, so I think they were like that type of family. So Alice has to compete with Hayden for like a month to see who Margaret will choose to write her life story. And I cared so little about the characters that I didn't really care about the book all that much, which is surprising because I gave it 3 stars. So it was a bit of a difficult read for me. The story was formatted with Alice in the present, and then when she do her interview with Margaret, it takes us to the past, kind of like in Margaret's perspective, similar to what's that one book? The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but not really. And people were comparing it, but I would have to say there aren't as many similarities as people made it out to be. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is the superior book, my opinion. Okay, so when we were with Alice and Hayden, I did want to go back into the past with Margaret. Yet when we were in the past with Margaret, I wanted to come back to the present of Alice and Hayden. I did not like these characters, so I'm going to be honest. So the book honestly felt just a bit too tedious at a certain point, and I was sick of Alice and Hayden by like the last 20 to 30% of the book. None of them are actually that interesting. I could care less about Alice's issues. I could care less about Margaret's life story. It's like you would expect more and it gave you nothing. Like, go girl, give us nothing. Anyway, and because I have that weird aversion to smut, I just sit there with like a skull on my face because Alice and Hayden will be like, okay, we're not gonna touch each other. We're not gonna do anything until like the month is up because we don't want it to get in the way of our relationship. And then they're touching each other. They're making out. They're doing this. I was just like, so we're telling lies nowadays, but that's okay. It just kept throwing me out of the book. And I saw someone said, oh my god, the tension because they're two tall people and they're sitting in a booth together and their knees are touching. Yeah, congratulations, their knees are touching, I guess. So interesting, so much tension, so delicious. And as much as I am dogging on Alice and Hayden, I did dislike Margaret more. At some point in the book, Margaret pissed me off. I can't even remember what she did, but she pissed me off. And I just decided I didn't like her for the rest of the book, and I just could never get immersed in it again. And then when like the entire truth came to light about why Margaret wanted, well, not even Alice, why she wanted Hayden there, I was like, I read this entire book for this mediocre end. Okay, cool. And the third act breakup was right there. So yeah. The second book I read in August, not October, August, was If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nowling. It was such a lovely book. I rated this book 3 stars, which is funny because it is the worst one I read in August. And I rated other books lower, which is surprising. The person who said I'd like this book is a low-down dirty liar, and I will never ever ever take book recommendations from them ever again. So basically, this book follows Autumn after the death of her childhood best friend Finny. Autumn says that if Finny had been with her that night instead of his girlfriend Sylvie, he would still be alive. This book was the worst, and I hate everyone in it. That the book opens with us knowing that Finny is already gone, but instead of it giving us like the present, it jumps us all the way back to the beginning of their high school journey, where Autumn and Finny are not friends. We later find out towards the end of the book that Autumn was the one who stopped being friends with Finny because he kissed her. You'll understand why I found that to be so freaking frustrating. So she stopped being friends with him because he kissed her. And that is kind of like a huge issue because she spends the entirety of high school pining after him and kind of imagining cheating on her boyfriend with Finny. And let me read this again directly, not from my brain. And she hates Finny's cheerleader girlfriend Sylvie, who hadn't actually done anything but date Finny. This book was a huge waste of time. Like, it was the biggest waste of my time. I feel like we didn't need to go through all those 5 years of high school, all those 4 years of high school to get that story, because it could have been split into two. So like, boom, we get the opening. Finny's dead. Autumn is spiraling. Jump to the past, then do time jumps through all the years, and then the other half of the book, it could jump us back to the present, and then it could be like, and this is how all of these people are coping with Finny's death. This is how Autumn is dealing with the death of her childhood best friend. But no, we spent 4 years in the past wasting our time. And like, a sequel was published like a decade after, but I don't like any of these characters. I don't like any of these people. I don't like the main character enough for me to go read that sequel. It's just like a waste of time. And back to my notes. The night Finny died, he had gone to Sylvie to break up with her after he cheated on her with Autumn. And they were arguing in the car and Sylvie was crying. Autumn herself had cried those same tears after her boyfriend Jamie had told her he had cheated on her with their mutual friend Sarah, but I guess she didn't care about Sylvie feeling what she felt. Like, it was pretty obvious that Jamie and Sarah had something going on at a certain point in the book. Even Autumn was suspicious of that. And to be fair, she and both Sarah and Autumn were chasing Jamie in their freshman year, but Jamie chose Autumn, but who cares about that? And all I remember thinking, what does that say? All I remember thinking at a certain point was, yeah, Autumn, if he had been with you, he wouldn't have died. But also, if he hadn't cheated on his girlfriend with you, he probably wouldn't have died. Or maybe if he hadn't become friends with you again after Jamie cheated, he probably wouldn't have died. Like, maybe his death was your fault, Autumn. Like, maybe if you had stayed out of his life, your Finny would still be alive. And that's something she used to say. She would always refer to him as my Finny, but only in her head, because she was an outcast. So she couldn't be seen to be fraternizing with the popular kids. She used to wear a tiara to school every day. She used to, like, that was her thing. She used to wear a tiara to school every day. Anyway, I did go on a rant to my best friend about this book and how much it frustrated me. Like, I was disparaging Autumn so bad, but then I realized it's not just Autumn's fault, and I need to ease up on the girl, because Finny was at fault too. Because your girlfriend is somewhere in Europe, doing a little backpacking post graduation, and you're definitely sleeping with the girl you most probably definitely told her not to worry about. Men, am I right? And then number 3, we have Madonna in a Fur Coat by Sabahattin Ali. This one was actually an interesting read, and by that I mean it wasn't interesting at all. So, the description per Goodreads. It is perhaps easier to dismiss a man whose face gives no indication of an inner life. And what a pity that is. A dash of curiosity is all it takes to stumble upon treasures we never expected. A shy young man lives his home in rural Turkey to learn a trade in 1920s Berlin. The city's crowded streets, thriving art scene, passionate politics, and seedy cabarets provide the backdrop for a chance meeting with a woman which will haunt him for the rest of his life. They really say men don't get over anything, and they were right. Emotionally powerful, intensely atmospheric, and touchingly profound, Madonna in a Fur Coat is an unforgettable novel about new beginnings and the unfathomable nature of the human soul. And per my Goodreads review, this book was dreadfully boring. I swear I found reading the dictionary to be much more enjoyable. Feels like a story that didn't need to be written. Maybe I just don't get it, but this was terrible. And I'm just going to add on here that this wasn't a testament of yearning like I've seen some reviews claim. It was just stupid and about a very pathetic man. Oh, and if you couldn't tell by my terse words, I gave it like a 1-star review, and even that felt like too much, because what do you mean you're on your deathbed? This man was married to someone else, right? And on his deathbed, he was worried about that stupid journal because, okay, so the story opens with some other guy, right? Befriending the guy who meets Madonna in a fur coat. I can't remember these people's names. I don't think I ever learned it. I'm pretty sure I like skipped over it every single time. And he befriends him as an old man who's always sick. And on his deathbed, he gets his hand on the journal, and in the journal, that is where we get the story of Madonna in a fur coat. Anyway, the reason that journal started with anyway. So next there was This Place Is Still Beautiful by Shishi Tian. So I have complicated feelings about this one because on one hand I liked it and I gave it a 4-star review. On the other hand, I did send my best friend a 14-minute voice note ranting about it. So This Place Is Still Beautiful is about the relationship between two Chinese American sisters. One who physically presents as Chinese and the other who doesn't, and their relationship with their mother and their town. So we have Annalie, who's the younger sister, and Margaret, the older and Chinese presenting sister, and they have a bit of a strange relationship. And because it's dual POV, we do see how envious they are of each other in a way. So Annalie calls Margaret back home from New York because someone painted a slur on their garage door. So Margaret, of course, comes in guns a-blazing because that's a hate crime. And she's wanting justice and to find and take down whoever perpetuated this hate crime. Unfortunately for Margaret, her mother and Annalie want to pretend like nothing happened and forget about it. They don't want to make a big deal about it and be labeled difficult. They want to keep their head down, yada yada yada. Margaret, on the other hand, disagrees and proceeds to draw attention to it. What frustrated me the most about the situation is that although I got both of their sides, I was mostly on Margaret's side, especially later on in the book when we find out who did it. So Annalie wanted to brush it off and keep her head down because she still lived there. She didn't want people to look at her, and if Margaret made a big fuss like she always did about these things, then people would judge her and shun her, and Margaret would feel none of it because she doesn't really live there anymore. She goes to university in New York, and she hadn't even been planning to come home for summer break until that issue happened. On the other hand, though, if someone didn't make a big deal out of it, about the harassment in the first place, nothing would be done about it. And it was actually quite hurtful because when her mom called her, when Annalie and Margaret's mom called Annalie, the woman was terrified. And when Annalie saw it, she legit called Margaret because she was having a breakdown in her car when she saw it. And then they wanted to pretend like nothing happened, which was just crazy to me. They didn't want people to talk. And on I'm gonna be honest, on a real note, I do kind of get it. So the thing about this that frustrated me is that Annalie, like, I get her, I think she was like 17, and Annalie felt really naive with some of the decisions she made, especially when we find out that the reason someone even painted the slur on their garage door in the first place was because of Margaret, was because they hated Margaret. And when Annalie found out who did it and chose to keep it a secret so she could still keep her boyfriend, I honestly just sighed and patiently waited for everything to blow up in her face, because the people, it was 2 guys who did it, were her boyfriend's best friends. And the reason she identified them is because one of them was wearing this joke hoodie with her boyfriend's last name on it that he always wears around. And that's how she found out. And then she lied to Margaret's face saying she didn't know who did it. Eventually she did come and admit that, yes, she knows who did it, and she went to the police. So that did happen. But yeah, I legit I was sending the voice to my friend and I was like, babe, like why is she out here sacrificing her identity and her voice for a man who isn't supporting her, who is asking her to pretend like it didn't happen to not ruin his friend's future. But anyway, on a lighter note, past that, and honestly I do think the situation was well handled, but on past that, there was something this book did that I really hate. You know that thing where a book introduces the main character and then she has this guy she likes and she has liked for so many years, and then they get together, they start dating, and he's sweet and everything's going well and he's all that she ever wanted him to be, and the new guy gets introduced to the story and they have chemistry, and you just know that the guy she's been wanting for years is going to do something stupid and messed up, and the relationship is going to end. And that frustrates me so much because now she's out here emotionally cheating on her boyfriend, but he hasn't actually done anything bad yet. And then when he does the bad thing, it's like we're supposed to accept that it's no big deal because he was bad. Like, okay, so this book didn't do it as bad as some books do it, but like I still hate when they do this, because when they introduced, I think his name was Daniel, I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely a love interest. They didn't officially get together by the end of the book, but like it was pretty obvious. And then the last one I read last month was This Time It's Real by Anne Liang. So Eliza needs a fake boyfriend to cover up the fact that that really romantic boyfriend she wrote about in her essay didn't exist. So she sets her sights on Kaz, who's this famous actor in her class, and as fake dating tropes go, they obviously develop feelings for each other, except Elijah sabotages herself because she grew up moving around a lot and losing out on people and connections, and she's terrified that that will happen with her and Kaz. Obviously by the end of the book this is resolved and they do get together, and she does come clean about the essay being fake, but we never actually see any fallout or consequences of this. The book ends on a happy note before she publishes that essay. And yeah, so there was also a side plot thrown in where she was drifting away from her long distance bestie and it was having like a really bad effect on her, but I'm going to be honest, it was pretty forgettable. Can't even remember the bestie's name. I look, it did relate to Eliza at certain points though, so I do get where she was coming from, and I did rate this one 5 stars. So yeah, so those are the books I read in the month of those are the books I read in the month of August. Thank you for visiting my library. Do come again. Mwah.